It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Rico Brogna time. How we doing? If you're listening and watching live, it's a Saturday night. The New York Mets have won 3 in a row. And so far, the key phrase is so far, they have not effed up. Because this series against the Chicago White Sox is the don't F up 3-game series. You are playing a team that is the worst team in the history of baseball. I think we could say it. I mean, they're going to break the 1962 Mets record. They're that bad. And so when you play them in the middle of a pennant race on Labor Day weekend, you can't F up by losing a game. And that may not seem fair, but that's the reality. And I think that these 2 games so far have both kind of played out the same way, if we're being honest with ourselves. Were we ever really nervous about either of these games? Probably not. I don't think there was ever a moment in which you thought, oh my God, they're going to lose to the Chicago White Sox. It wasn't the prettiest thing in the world. It wasn't aesthetically pleasing. It wasn't complete, utter blowouts. But the Mets are able to win back-to-back games against the Chicago White Sox. And here's what's amazing before we dive deep into these 2 games and look ahead to Sunday's game. What's so incredible, and maybe it's symbolic of the way this Mets season has gone, the twists and the turns, the roller coaster ride nature of this. We are only 3.5 days removed from a lot of us feeling, oh, wow, we've seen the death of a season. That loss to the Arizona Diamondbacks, not that long ago, but that long ago, it was a couple of days ago when Edwin Diaz imploded on the mound and we saw Corbin Carroll hit that grand slam in game 2. That was all the way back on Wednesday. It is now Saturday. But when that ball landed in the right field seats and the Mets officially lost to the Arizona Diamondbacks 8 minutes later or whatever it was, I think deep down in our soul, we all thought we were screwed. It certainly felt that way. And to this team's credit, and the help of some things actually breaking the Mets' way, the Atlanta Braves actually losing a freaking game, isn't that nice to see? A couple of games, isn't that nice to see? All of a sudden, you look up, the Mets win 3 in a row, responding to that brutal loss. The San Diego Padres have really looked human since the Mets split that 4-game series, another series they should have won. And you look at the standings and you feel a little bit better. I'm not saying I'm cocky or even confident, but it is incredible how different the feeling is 3 days later. The win against Arizona in game 3, a game I never thought for a second they were going to win, and then following it up so far by taking care of business against the Chicago White Sox. As far as the game we just witnessed, again, if you're listening or watching live against Chicago, Jose Quintana was very, very mediocre. And probably because it is the Chicago White Sox, a team that scores a shade over 3 runs per game, he was able to make that big pitch, or the White Sox were able to get the big hit every time they had a shot. I give Quintana like a little bit of credit that he was able to get through 5 innings because his pitch count was so high early in this game. And you already know Edwin Diaz is not available. Other than that, pretty much everyone else is available, maybe with the exception of Reed Garrett. But despite having 90 pitches through 4 innings, and I think like 75 pitches through 3 or whatever it was, he was able to fight his way through 5 innings. It was never easy. There were guys on base every single inning. He was helped out a little bit by probably some overzealous Chicago White Sox bats. Actually, it was probably the opposite. They were looking at pitches right down the middle, and Quintana had a couple of big looking strikeouts, one that ended the 1st inning, one that ended the 3rd inning, one that ended the 4th inning. It was not an inspiring outing by Quintana, but he was good enough. And we saw the Met offense jump on Davis Martin early. Pete Alonso hit a 1st inning home run, which, yes, is clutch. I know Hoff was wondering. Yes, it is clutch. It fits the clutch category when you hit a 2-run home run early in the game. But how about Jesse Winker? My God. Jesse Winker no longer killing us, which he did for so many years. Now he's on a rampage. Was he like 8 for his last 11? Something obscene like that. Follows up Pete's home run with a home run of his own. Gets an RBI single in the 3rd inning, which was pretty important because it looked like the Mets were destined to have that great opportunity and not score. So you have a red-hot Jesse Winker. You have Pete Alonso hitting a bomb of a home run. And you see the Mets at least early in this game, because after that, they did nothing. After really, if you think about it, the first inning in which they hit the back-to-back home runs by Pete Alonso and Jesse Winker, which was great. You jump out to a 3-0 lead. You give Quintana a little bit of a cushion. If you look at their offense after the first inning, it was actually borderline pathetic. That's why I say they won these games. They have not been aesthetically pleasing. They have not been dominant by any stretch, and they don't have to be. I'm certainly not complaining. It's just more of an observation. I don't care how you win these games. Just beat the Chicago White Sox 3 times. But you go to the third inning, they have a 3-1 lead at this point. They get the first 2 guys on base. Francisco Lindor bloops a hit on an 0-2 pitch. Great piece of hitting. Brandon Nimmo draws a walk. You have 2-1 and nobody out. Vientos hits a ball right at the left fielder, Benintendi. Alonzo flies out to center, and it looks like they're going to waste a 2-1, nobody out, heart of the order opportunity against Davis Martin, whose pitch count, too, was very high, similar to Quintana. And Jesse Winker, who has been so good over the last few weeks, one of the most underrated, important at-bats of this game. You're about to spoil a 2-1, nobody out opportunity. It's a 3-1 game with Quintana pretty shaky in the early goings, and Winker dunks an 0-2 pitch in a right center field for an RBI single. Important run. They get a golden opportunity in the 5th inning when Martin dropped the spring training play on the ground ball to first base. Nimmo bounces into a double play. They have a great opportunity in the 6th inning. They settle for 1 run when Starling Marte gets the RBI hit. Then in the 7th inning against the Yankee reject De Los Santos, you get Lindor picked off. Then you get 2 guys on base with 1 out, and Alonso strikes out, and Tyrone Taylor strikes out. They missed a lot of opportunities in this game, and they also struck out a lot, which we've talked about. Negative Dan brought that up in one of the emails we read on one of these recent Ricos, and that trend continued. The Mets struck out, let me count this up. Hold on a second. 8, 10, 11, 12 times. It's a lot. 12 times, 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position. So it was not perfect by any stretch. But the thing that's been so impressive, and it was impressive in this game, despite the clunky ending, it was impressive in game 1 of this series on Friday, and honestly has been very impressive going back to the entirety of the Arizona series, with the exception of Edwin Diaz. This Met bullpen has been very, very good. Very, very good. They had the implosion on Sunday against the San Diego Padres where Budo gives up the lead, and then Edwin Diaz gives up the game, the walk-off to Jackson Merrill. But if you look at the 3 games against Arizona and now these 2 games against Chicago, the underbelly of the Met bullpen, the part of the bullpen that we don't trust, has actually pitched really well. Before you say, come on, Ev, you can't count it, it's against the Chicago White Sox, I don't want to hear it. I don't think any Met fan should ever even utter that kind of thing, because the truth is the Mets stink against bad teams. I know the numbers don't bear that out this season. I think their winning percentage against teams under 500 is like 60%. So they actually technically haven't been bad against bad teams. But when you watch this team, especially towards the end of 2022, at times this season, really recently, they have not beaten up on the bad teams as much as they should. So I don't care how many runs per game the White Sox score, which is like 3.05. I don't care how crappy their bullpen is. Everything counts the same. So I'm going to give the Met bullpen credit for shutting down the White Sox offense, because the truth is they did it against the Diamondback offense too. You look at game 2 of this series against Chicago. You get 5 innings out of Jose Quintana, which we talked about. It was a very rocky outing. His pitch count was way high. Very fortunate to get through those 5 innings. And you don't exactly have the hugest lead in the world. Like when Quintana hands the ball to the Met bullpen, you have a 5-2 lead. It's a 3-run lead, but it's not astronomical. Certainly with this bullpen, a bullpen that over the months we haven't trusted. Go one by one. He goes to Huáscar Brazoban in the 6th inning. And Brazoban, not dominant, got a great defensive play by Brandon Nimmo, making that diving catch. A little scary because it looked like he hurt his wrist for a second. hits a batter, throws a wild pitch, sloppy play by Alvarez, needs to get down on it, but gets through the inning. A hitless, scoreless inning by Huascar Brazaban. Then he goes to Ryan Stanek, who I have to tell you had his best performance as a New York Met. And I almost forgot Ryan Stanek was on the team. When he came into this game and I saw his beautiful, luscious blonde hair, I was thinking to myself, I score every freaking Met game. When's the last time I wrote the name Ryan Stanek down? It feels like I hadn't done it in a while. I go to Baseball Reference. It'd been a week. So as overworked as the Met bullpen has been recently, Carlos Mendoza has not pitched Ryan Stanek a lot. Why would you? But Ryan Stanek comes in against the top of the order and pitches a 1-2-3 inning. He goes to Phil Maton, who's pitched a ton recently and has been very good. I know I've had a few people say, come on, Ev, you got to put him in the circle of trust. I think I'm ready to do it. Not confidently, not boldly, but like tentatively. Yeah, I think Phil Maton now moves into the circle of trust. But what does he do? He comes in, barely breaks a sweat, throws 8 or 9 pitches, pitches a 1-2-3 inning. So you've got Brazaban, scoreless, hitless inning. You have Stanek, 1-2-3 inning. You've got Maton, 1-2-3 inning. And really the only guy who sort of struggled was Jose Butto. But to Butto's credit, and I would always say this about a closer when you come in with a lead to protect, a save situation, even if it's a 3-run lead. If you don't give up the lead, you did your freaking job. So even though, yes, the White Sox got the tying runs on, and yes, Andrew Benintendi, who has looked very good offensively in this series, including 2 hits against a lefty, Quintana, in this game, despite the fact that Benintendi came up with a chance to absolutely kill our souls, to make this Rico sound very differently right now if Benintendi got a hold of one, Buddha got the job done and got him to chop one back to the mound. So the Met bullpen in this game, effective. You go back to Friday's game, the game that took place last night if you're listening live. We'll get deeper into what Tyler McGill did, but the Mets need to get 11 outs out of their bullpen. And they're doing it at the time, again, with a 3-run lead. Not an 8-run lead, a 3-run lead. Adam Ottavino, as much as we crush him, back-to-back strikeouts to get through the 6th inning. Reed Garrett, as much as he's come back to earth, 1-2-3 inning. Phil Maton, the aforementioned Phil Maton. We saw Tyrone Taylor make that Spider-Man play in the 8th inning. He pitches a 1-2-3 inning. And then Edwin Diaz came into the game. He pitched a 1-2-3 inning. I know it's the Chicago White Sox, but you go back a day earlier to the game against the Arizona Diamondbacks, Edwin Diaz, 1-2-3 inning. Jose Butto, scoreless inning. You start to add this up. Met bullpen has pitched very, very well. And in that game that Diaz blew, and we touched on it a little bit when we were all pissed off doing that instant reaction Rico, but the Met bullpen actually did a pretty freaking good job to where it allowed them to come back in that game and allowed Diaz to have the lead. Huascar Brazaban, scoreless inning. Danny Young got a couple of big outs. Reed Garrett got a couple of big outs. And Phil Maton wasn't really given the opportunity to get through his mini jam he put in, which was just a runner on 1st and 2 out. So, yeah, Diaz sucked and he imploded. I'm not trying to negate all of that, but the underbelly of the Met bullpen, going back to game 2 of the Arizona series, really game 1 of the Arizona series, if you want to go back further, but they got a good performance out of Minai. He went into the 7th inning, has pitched very well on this road trip, really since the San Diego game. Who's given up runs? Edwin Diaz, when he gives up the grand slam. Jose Butto, but still got the job done, protecting that 3-run lead. Outside of that, Huascar Brazaban, Reed Garrett, Phil Maton, they've all done a nice job. And the hope is, I heard Gary Cohen say this on the broadcast. I've said this on the Rico many times. What your numbers have said through the first 5 months of this season, they don't mean anything if you can perform in September. If Ryan Stanek can turn into a reliable relief pitcher in the month of September, then who gives a crap how bad he was in August? If Phil Maton can continue to pitch this way, then maybe we look back at the acquisition of Maton as Hey, that was a hell of a move by David Stearns. We'll see if Braziban can continue to turn his season around. Those are obviously the three big bullpen additions. But the bullpen's pitched well. It's a part of why we're in this situation. I mean, the Mets are in a spot going into the finale of this series against the Chicago White Sox where they have a chance, and this is kind of amazing to think about, to go 7-3 on this West Coast trip. 7-3. Now, this sucks to say because, yes, going into this trip, 6-4 would have been great. But if they lose to Chicago and finish 6-4, I don't think we're all going to be in great moods because the White Sox are a team you cannot lose to. And I know that's a crazy thing to say because they're a professional baseball team. But so far, this West Coast trip has been a success. And I think a big part of how they've been able to do it, despite things not being perfect, is the underbelly of this bullpen. Yes, they blew 2 games. Yes, Edwin Diaz blew 2 games. Jose Butto contributed to that as well. But everyone else, the other guys that we don't trust, have actually done a great job over the last 5 games that they have come into. And it hasn't exactly been easy. As far as Friday's game is concerned, Tyler McGill was interesting. It was typical of Tyler McGill. And again, I know people may want to minimize what he did because it is the Chicago White Sox. But Tyler McGill got off to such a horrible start in this game. And maybe this was the only moment of the weekend so far where I had real nerves. Tyler McGill comes in, first start in how many weeks? Really since the trade deadline when they acquired Paul Blackburn to replace him. Tyler McGill makes his first start in a while, and he walks the first hitter. Fell behind Nicky Lopez 3-0, works it full, and then walks him. When he walks the oh-so-crappy Nicky Lopez to start this series and to start that game on a Friday night, that was the moment I had my biggest, oh, crap. Oh, God. And then he gives up that smoked RBI double to Andrew Benintendi. That was so far, and maybe Sunday he'll change that with Garrett Crochet against Sean Manaea. But that sequence in the first inning was when I was at my most nervous so far of these 2 games. And what's funny is I was watching that game. I'll be honest with you. Me and my wife were celebrating our anniversary that night, and I didn't start this game till 2 a.m. So it was one of those odd ones. I started it at 2 a.m. No spoilers. I may not have had all my cognitive abilities when I started this game, but I'll tell you, my scorecard doesn't look too bad. For someone who didn't have all of their cognitive abilities and passed out a few hours earlier and then woke up in the middle of the night and said, time to watch Met baseball, my scorecard doesn't look too bad. But what's funny is when you DVR a game like that and you really have no idea what's going on because I don't check my phone, I got nothing. So I literally am watching a game at 2 a.m. with no idea what happened. You do experience the real kind of thoughts that one has when watching a game live. Why wouldn't you? So when McGill gives up the first inning run, I'm a little worried. Not that I was worried that Jonathan Cannon was going to shut them out, but I was really worried. And Ron Darling has brought this up a lot over these 2 games, and he's so right. I was worried that Tyler McGill was going to be so bad, and there were all indications that that was going to be the case. Gives up the run in the first inning. To his credit, got through the first inning. Puts the first 2 guys on base in the second inning. I was worried he was going to be so bad that even the Met offense wasn't going to be enough. And I was worried that if the Mets had to go to their bullpen in, let's say, the second or third inning, it would be almost impossible to get that amount of outs because they don't have a long man. And Darling mentioned that a lot over the last 2 days. He mentioned it in relation to Quintana when Quintana was in trouble and he wasn't throwing strikes. Hey, if Carlos Mendoza had different personnel, if Carlos Mendoza had a true long man, would this be handled differently? And the answer is it could be, but you can't do that even with 8 relievers. And they're about to have 9 once September 1st rolls around, which is now. I guess it's already happened. Alex Young is being called up. They still don't have a long reliever. And so it's very difficult to go to your bullpen in the second or third inning, which sometimes is the case, and then have a guy just eat up a bunch of innings because they don't have anybody like that. They've got guys who could give you 2 innings, Reed Garrett has shown you he could do that. They've got guys that maybe if they're pitching well can get you those 6 outs, but they don't have that kind of failed starter, if you will, in the bullpen that can be the long man. And before you say Jose Butto, unless the Mets are completely changing his role, which despite how shaky he's been his last handful of appearances, I'm not ready to do that. I'm not ready to say Jose Butto's a long man. And if the Mets had to go to the bullpen in the second inning, that's the guy I'm going to. Maybe in a playoff game, maybe there would be circumstances that would lead to making him the guy you go to, but it certainly wasn't going to be the case Friday night. And so Tyler McGill, despite that awful start, after he put the first 2 guys on base in the second inning of this game, 2 on, nobody out. At this point, it's 1-1 because it was huge how the Mets were at least able to respond in the top of the second inning, and they were very lucky to do it because Harris and Bader grounded into what should have been an inning double play, despite the Mets having the bases loaded and nobody out. They had a chance to have a disastrous second inning, but luckily Bader beat it out. They got the run across. And yeah, it was disappointing. Bases loaded, nobody out. They only score a run, but it would have been far worse if they didn't score any runs. But after McGill put those first 2 guys on base, he got the strikeout of Vargas. He got the little soft line drive to Alonzo. And then he got Luis Robert Jr. with the bases loaded after he gave up an infield hit. And he was great after that. He really was. He had some good defense behind him. Francisco Lindor made that leaping catch. Pete Alonso had a great scoop on a bad throw by Lindor. And all of a sudden, Tyler McGill's into the 6th inning. It doesn't change, I don't think, any of us in having confidence in him. And hopefully he doesn't have to be in the rotation too long. And hopefully Paul Blackburn can come back. Blackburn was mostly good since they made that trade with Oakland. But Tyler McGill was able to settle in, give him innings, throw almost 100 pitches, 5 1/3 innings. It's not the worst. And it was certainly far better than I thought where it was going after he got off to that bad start. But they get the home run by J.D. Martinez. They scored just a few runs. 5 runs. I know that's a lot technically. You score 5 runs a game, you're doing your job. But it did feel, and the Mets did this on Friday and Saturday, which was why I say it hasn't been aesthetically pleasing. They left a lot of opportunities out there. They've had a lot of opportunities against this awful Chicago team to score more runs than they already have. But nevertheless, they win. Good job by Tyler McGill. Great job by Adam Ottavino coming and getting the back-to-back strikeouts in the 6th inning, nursing that 4-1 lead. As far as Mendy's decision to go to Edwin Diaz is concerned, and I think that it was one of those scenarios where we all kind of knew the answer before we heard the answer. Edwin was warming up in the 9th inning. The Mets had a 4-1 lead, and Mendy was okay with using him for a 3rd straight game. I think we have entered the part of the season where doing that makes sense. Now you got to win. Every game is a pennant race game. Every game is a playoff game. So I think you do have to manage aggressively. And so I'm glad Diaz was available. We talked about it on the Rico previous to that. He should be available. He was. It's a 4-1 game. It's the top of the 9th inning. He's obviously warming up for a save opportunity, and the Mets tack on a run on a Mark Vientos sacrifice fly, and he still goes to Edwin Diaz. 2 things. Number 1, and this is kind of the main reason why I would have done it anyway, and it isn't even the warming up scenario, because the one thing I don't know, and I think every player is different, is how many warm-up tosses did he throw, and is that really going to affect him from being available the following day? Mendy claimed it was. So obviously, if him warming up was going to eliminate him from pitching on Saturday anyway, you may as well pitch him Friday. But here's the real reason. With a 4-run lead, I've moved into the category of being partial to just going to my closer, especially when I just tacked on a run. All it's going to take is a base runner, basically, for all of us to say, all right, stop screwing around, go to Edwin Diaz. I mean, if we're being honest, I know Diaz has been shaky, though he's responded to that shakiness by the save against Arizona in Game 3 and what he subsequently did on Friday night. But when you have a 4-run lead, you don't have that big of a cushion. You put a guy on base, and you got to deal with the 3-batter minimum too, so you can't exactly do it immediately. Why not just stop screwing around, just go to him? if that's your better reliever? Why put someone else in there when they have to face 3 batters? And with a 4-run lead, they could put the 3 guys on base. It could be bases loaded, nobody out. All right, fine. Now I'm going to Edwin Diaz. That's literally the worst case scenario, and that's a legitimate possibility. So just go to him. And that's why I was okay with it. More so than even the idea of he was warming up and now he's not going to be available to pitch the next day. I think every pitcher is different. God bless you. I think every pitcher is different. But if that's the case with Diaz, fine. Obviously, you may as well use him. But I'm also thinking strategy-wise, why screw around? Get the victory. I know the White Sox are bad, but I don't think the Mets are in any position to manage arrogantly. If this was May, sure. If this was June, sure. But I think when you are staring down the barrel of knowing there are so few games left, the Mets have now played, how many games have they played now? Let me do the math. 136 games. So what do they got left? 26 games? I think that's correct math, right, Hoff? I don't know. Did you get any sleep? Hoff was doing the overnight Friday into Saturday. Hoff was on the radio talking about all this while I was sitting there in a stupor watching the Met game at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was like a bond we had going on.
I was very ecstatic, and I've made many points of why I think the Mets are going. Listen, there's 4 teams fighting for 3 spots. You could throw 15 with the Cubs. They won again today too. But realistically, it's 4 teams. And I said this last podcast, and I believe it. They're one of these teams. Not all these teams are going to stay hot. I mean, I'm just going through it right now. The Braves were 14-7 the last 21 games. The Arizona Diamondbacks are on some kind of crazy ass tear. They're like 20 and like 8 the last 30 games. And the Padres are pretty good too. The Mets have been basically 500 for the past month. They are going to break out. That I'm telling you right now, this is prime for the Mets to break out. So I'm excited. I'm ecstatic. They have the White Sox right now. They got to win tomorrow. I don't like the Crochet Mania matchup because you're going up against a really good pitcher. But I still think at the end of the day, we're going to be put in a position. We're going to be 1 game out of the playoff, out of the wild card by tomorrow.
Well, they need a hot streak, and right now maybe this is the beginning of the hot streak. The win against Arizona, winning 2 out of 3 against Arizona, and obviously so far the 2 against Chicago. So it's 4 out of 5. Now, they need more than that. The Padres have come back to earth. Thank you to the Tampa Bay Rays for taking care of business on Saturday. And the Atlanta Braves finally lost the game to the Phillies. Thank you, Zach Wheeler. I mean, honestly, thank you, Zach. He's had a tremendous season. I'm still bitter he's not a New York Met. Not at him. I'm bitter at the former owner and the former general manager who made those douchey comments when they let Zach Wheeler go. But yes, they finally getting a little bit of help. You may be right. You were the first to say this on the Rico a week ago, whenever it was, about San Diego. And how that's a team you got to keep an eye on coming back down to earth. Because, A, their lineup doesn't have that much depth. They have some weird, like, I know they're expecting Yu Darvish back, but I don't even know what you could expect from Yu Darvish when he comes back. But besides that, they were red hot for a while, and now they're cooling off. And so you can see, and they have a lot of games with the Giants who have played reasonably well. They have a series with Detroit. I was actually analyzing the Padres schedule the other day, looking at them, because remember, the Mets have the tiebreaker on them. So all you've got to do is catch them. And right now they're 3 games back. I don't look at it I don't look at it as they're 4 games back. I look at it as they're 3 games back because of the loss column. And if you can make up 3 games on San Diego, you've essentially passed them because of the tiebreaker. Arizona, we'll see. They obviously are in the midst of a series with the LA Dodgers, which is an opportunity. But really, this comes down to Sunday now. The Mets have to finish the job. They really do. I don't want to hear if they lose against Chicago. I was 6-4. It was great. I think it would be very typical of the Mets, where, and this road trip has been an example of this, where they're so close to doing something special, and then they blow it. They were this close to winning 3 out of 4 against the red hot at the time San Diego Padres. And in game 4, they blew it. They're this close to winning the first 2 games against the even hottest team in baseball, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they lose that game. They're this close. And now, as they go into this Mania Crochet matchup on Sunday afternoon, they're this close to a shocking 7-3 West Coast Central Zone road trip. It doesn't even matter how you lose that game. If you don't seal the deal in a game like that, it'll be very typical of what we've seen throughout this trip, which is good, but not good enough. And I know it's baseball and it's tough to sweep series. They pointed that out on us and why with that stat that 8% of teams sweep 3-game series is, yeah, but they're facing the White Sox. The White Sox, who are 31-106. Let me say that again. They're 31-106. They are, without a shadow of a doubt. And I watched a lot of 2003 Tigers. Don't ask me why. I watched a lot of 2003 Tigers. This is the worst freaking baseball team I've ever seen. Got to beat them on Sunday.
Dude, their lineup consists of guys that they picked up off of waivers or got in trades where they were basically retreads. I mean, Miguel Vargas is one of the bigger names. He came from the Dodgers. I mean, this is a guy that's a retread. I mean, they handed him away in LA because he just hasn't been hitting. I mean, it's a joke of a team, dude.
Well, they're giving opportunities to like former prospects who are still relatively young. Jacob Amaya and Miguel Vargas kind of fit that, where you're hoping, maybe it'll work out. Luis Robert Jr., I don't know what the hell happened to him. He was a guy we talked about during the offseason. Sign me up for a big trade for Luis Robert Jr. He has absolutely killed his trade value by having this awful season. But you know what? This ain't our problem. Okay? Honestly, this is not our problem. Does good Sean Manaea show up on a Sunday afternoon? He's mostly been good here in the second half of the year since watching Chris Sale outside of that one mediocre start where he only went 3 innings. And can this offense hit enough against Garrett Crochet? And can they just win this game and get back to Citi Field with a 7-3 road trip where they're at the bare minimum, they're 2 games behind Atlanta, but who knows? Maybe they're a game behind Atlanta, which was my stated goal going into this series against Chicago.
All right, I have a couple thoughts for you, okay? First of all, Tyler McGill, did he earn himself another start? And did Jose Quintana earn himself a DFA after that performance? I know he went 5 innings, but it's the White Sox.
He didn't earn himself who are you replacing him with?
I mean, at this point in time,
Tyler McGill. That would be the answer. Yeah, so the Mets have an off day this week. They play Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday against Boston. So if my math is correct, and I'm going to try to do some math on this, on Monday, they've got Luis Severino ready to go. Okay? Hold on. Let me see if I'm confirming this. I got to go back on my scorecard. That's why I have it in front of me. It helps me out. You got Luis tomorrow. You got Luis. Forget Manaea tomorrow. We know Manaea tomorrow. You got Severino on Monday. You've got David Peterson on Tuesday. And you have to come back with Tyler McGill on Wednesday. You don't have the ability to skip him. I was thinking in my head, with this off day, would you have a chance to skip him? And no, you can't. You have to come back with McGill on Wednesday. Then you have the off day Thursday. And then, yes, you can come back with Quintana Friday against Cincinnati. And then Saturday with Sean Manaea. And then hopefully Paul Blackburn is ready to come back off of the injured list. So, yeah, I don't even think it's about Tyler McGill earning another spot. They kind of have to start him on Tuesday night against the Red Sox.
I feel like everybody in the world's getting DFA, getting cut, like Tyler Rogers. Was it Taylor or Tyler? Which one got cut?
I forget which one, but one of them, got placed on waivers.
Yeah. I mean, all these guys getting hit in waivers. You tell me that there isn't a solid pitcher out there hitting waivers who might just cost a little bit more money that you can't pick up?
Yeah, for the rotation or for the bullpen?
For the rotation, even. I would take anybody.
I don't. The answer is no. I don't. It's not like there's solid middle of the rotation arms that are just available left and right. I think it's one more start from McGill, and then Paul Blackburn should be ready to go. And I'll tell you where Tyler McGill is going to have some value, and they'll have to decide who eventually gets sent down. We mentioned that Alex Young is going to be the extra arm. We've got new rules with the expanded rosters. It's been like this for a half a decade now, but like the old days where you could just call 100 guys up. It was so easy. Just, I'm going to call 9 guys up. It was ridiculous. It got completely out of hand. And now you can only call up 2 guys, 1 guy a position player, 1 guy a pitcher. So they're definitely calling up Alex Young, who deserves to come up here. But Tyler McGill needs to be that long man we described earlier. They don't have one. If you need to go to the bullpen early for whatever reason, whether it's an injury, like we saw with Paul Blackburn, whether it's ineffectiveness, like you want to have the ability to go to a guy who can come in and pitch 3 or 4 innings like the White Sox had with Touki Toussaint. So I think McGill may actually stay on this roster after his turn in the rotation is over, but he'll get that start against Boston later this week.
All right, and the final one I have for you, I know I'm not sure if you have anything else you want to hit, but Pete Alonso, 30th home run. Congratulations. First Met to ever have 5 seasons of 30-plus home runs ever.
Crazy, right?
Unbelievable. Pete Alonso needs to be back for at least 1 year. How can we get he's good? Am I wrong? He needs to at least break the all-time home run record for the Mets. Am I wrong?
Well, I want him on the Mets long term for a myriad of reasons. Not just for 1 more year to break the record. I'd want him to be here for the rest of his career so he could shatter that record and own it forever. But it is kind of remarkable to think he had his 30th home run, and I think we would all agree it was a relatively clutch home run because it gave the Mets a 2-0 lead. It's so funny. I talked about this on The Fan recently in relation to Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge, if you guys aren't aware, has set the record for the most first-inning home runs ever in a season, right? Single-season home run record. He has the single-season home run record for home runs in the first inning. And I was making the point on the air, how clutch is that? It's incredibly clutch because in the first inning, you have to be giving your team either the lead, maybe tying the game, but it's definitely not a tack-on blowout home run. There's no scenario other than batting around where you're hitting a first-inning home run and it's like a tack-on, that doesn't matter. It's a clutch home run, right?
Who did he beat, by the way? Was it Brady Anderson? Because that's my guess. I remember that year he had 50 home runs. Felt like every game he led off with a home run.
Yeah, I don't know who he broke the record of. I mean, it could be Babe Ruth. I mean, it could be anybody. Like Babe Ruth was batting third. So when he hit the 60 home runs, it very well could have been him. Barry Bonds was batting third when he hit the 73. So I'm not too sure. But either way, when you hit a first inning home run, it's clutch. I'd love for Pete to just shatter that record and move on. But what I was trying to say is, like, he's having the off year that we've talked about. He's at 30 home runs. He's at 76 RBIs. Now, it would take a big September to go 40 and 100, but it's on the table. But the 40 will probably be more difficult than getting to 100. You're talking about 24 RBIs in 26 games, which is a lot, but it would take, a reasonable hot streak. Either way, you're looking at over 30 and probably over 90. So those don't grow on trees, and that's what Pete was able to put up. Let me get to some of your emails here on the Rico B. Ralph writes, too close for comfort. I was absolutely terrified in the 9th inning, was envisioning another walk-off loss. Cannot take another one of those, but we made it. Not over yet, but it's a must-win tomorrow. God bless Zach Wheeler. Yes, thank you, Zach Wheeler. And yes, I didn't have a lot of nerves over these 2 games. It was McGill's issues early on Friday night, and it was, holy crap, Andrew Benintendi's coming up as the winning run. But yeah, things got a little bit dicey in the 9th inning, but ultimately they got the job done. Negative Dan writes, the impossible force versus the immovable object. The Mets haven't swept the series since July 9th against Washington, but I'm sure they'll be able to finish the job against the team that has 106 losses before September, right? I wonder if JD will give his rah-rah, who cares we lost, nobody expected us here anyway speech that he talked about yesterday if they lose tomorrow. I'm sure we'll love to hear that. He is right that I was going through this. How have the Mets done this season? Not just recently, this season, when they've won the first 2 games of a 3-game series. Like, how often have they swept the team? What do the numbers look like? So I looked it up. Took about 30 seconds. Didn't take that much time. This will be the 10th time that they go into game 3 of a 3-game series looking for a sweep. Okay, so 9 times previously, they've looked for a sweep. If you had to guess, Hoff, what is their record in that game 3 looking for a sweep?
5-4.
Close. 4-5. The
All
exact opposite. The last time they were in that scenario was at Citi Field against the Marlins. They won the first 2 games, and they blew that game on Sunday. The time previous to that was the Minnesota series. Right after they lost those 2 to Atlanta, they won the first 2 games against the Twins. And then in the afternoon, they got absolutely blown out, and they missed an opportunity there. Previous time before that was against the Colorado Rockies, final series before the All-Star break, where they won the first 2 games and lost on a Sunday afternoon. So they're on a little bit. Oh, and it continues. Before that was the Washington series that Dan talked about, where they swept them. And the time before that was in Texas when they won the first 2 and lost the third. So it hasn't been a recent stretch of success in terms of sweeping a 3-game series. But here's what's different between all of those things and what they face on Sunday afternoon. They're the Chicago White Sox. They are maybe the worst team ever assembled. And that is why, no pressure, they better freaking sweep them. That's why this series is the don't F it up series. And so far, they haven't effed it up. I give them a lot of credit. So far, so good. They've gained ground. They've won 2 games. I don't give a damn how it looked. They've won those 2 games. But now, going into Crochet Mania Sunday afternoon at Guaranteed Rate Field. What a crappy name for a stadium. They better win. They better win.
When was the last time, and I don't know if you looked at the stats. If you did so, then you know it. When's the last time that Crochet went to the 5th inning?
Garrett Crochet?
Yes.
I haven't done a deep dive on Garrett Crochet. Why? Has he been ineffective since he wasn't traded at the trade deadline? And he basically said, I need a contract or I'm not going anywhere?
So I don't understand the 27th. That was the one that was 4 pitches, so that they suspended. The suspended game he pitched.
Yeah, the suspended game was recently and that was actually his last start, which was, they gave him the full rest too, which is kind of funny to me. He comes out, he makes a start, he gets suspended after 4 pitches. Because I was curious, knowing the Mets are going to play Chicago, hey, when are they going to slot him back into the rotation? 28, 29, 30, 31. Yeah, they're giving him the full 4 days rest before he makes the start against the Mets, which is hilarious.
So I'm going to go in reverse order. So we had that where he went 4 pitches. Then the start before that, August 21st, he went 4 innings. August 16th, 4 innings. August 9th, 2 1/3. August 3rd, 4 innings. July 28th, 3 innings. July 23rd, 4 innings.
Yeah.
July 12th, 2 innings. July 6th, 4 innings. June 30th was the last time he went to the 7th inning.
Well, I think the reason behind that is they're really restricting his pitch counts. Because if you look at his pitch counts on all of those starts you mentioned, 4 innings start against the Giants, he threw 57 pitches. Start before that, 4 innings, 1 run against the Astros, 55 pitches. Start before that, he got bombed against the Cubs, 2 1/3 innings, 7 runs, 67 pitches. Start before that, 4 innings, 1 run, 77 pitches. Start before that, 3 innings, 5 runs, 64 pitches. Start before that, July 23rd, 4 innings, 2 runs, 74 pitches. So he's been kept his last 2 starts were in the 50s. But they are really restricting his pitch count. And I think that's all connected to what he said before the trade deadline, which was, I want a contract extension, which obviously the White Sox haven't given him. So they are handling him with care. It's another reason why this game is a must win. And I hate using that term must win because, yes, they can lose the game and still make the playoffs. We just witnessed that loss against Arizona and how they've been able to respond to it. But when you're talking about a good young pitcher who's clearly being restricted, he's not going deep in the game. And the White Sox have a bad bullpen. Even though the Mets haven't fully taken advantage of it in the first 2 games of this series, that's going to be the key Sunday afternoon. Clearly, Crochet is not going deep into this game. The Mets are then going to have to take advantage of it. Let me read a couple more of your emails. Lucas writes, Evan, I've established a new perspective on this crazy Met fan life. Before this perspective started right after the Diaz fiasco, I freaked out over the big losses and maybe declared seasons over a few times. But alas, I see things differently. With 28 games left, if translated to the NBA, that is the equivalent of mid-February, which is the All-Star break. Would you declare the Nets season over if they were 3 games back at the All-Star break? Maybe you would because it's the Nets, but that's not the point. I know you don't do this, but we have so much time left and so much happens in September. Met fans need to chill with this new perspective and enjoy the pennant chase. I get what you're trying to do. Like, look at the calendar. There's a lot of time left. It's not that when they lose a game, the season is over. I've tried not to say that because I don't actually think the season is over. It's more the emotions of losing a brutal game and how difficult it is in the moment and what a missed opportunity it was. And that's the key, a missed opportunity. When they lost to the Arizona Diamondbacks, and yeah, it could have turned into 8 straight losses, and then we would have said that was the game that lost the Mets the season. It was the missed opportunity. And if the Mets miss the playoffs by 1 game, granted, we may not go back to each individual game that they blew and say that's why they lost the season. We'll probably think of some game in September. That'll be the reason. But it contributes because it's the missed opportunity. So I think sometimes we get way too emotional in declaring a season over, but not too emotional in being pissed off after a loss. So I don't regret anything from 4 days ago. I was pissed off. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. It was 12:30. The Mets blew a game. I mean, what are you supposed to say? Don't worry. There's 27 left. Patience. But credit to this team. They've responded. They have responded. But what they need to do now is not continue the trend. The trend has been they respond. That's great. But the trend has been just when they're about to take that next step, they fail. Like I mentioned, 4th game against San Diego. Middle game against Arizona. Final game against the Marlins, if you want to go back then. This is one of those moments, small moment, but significant moment. Don't let go of the rope. Don't let this trip finish on a negative note. Seal the deal. And then you come home and we start anew with the Red Sox and the Reds.
So I have 2 positive notes I just want to give you right now. In our fantasy baseball league, which I knocked you out of, I apologize.
Thank you for that. Yes,
you're welcome. I just had a stolen base, a key stolen base. It's going to put me 13-3. I'm in that final spot for playoffs. So this is
I'm happy for you.
It's amazing. On top of that, beneficial to the Mets, Tommy Edman got a 2-run double in the bottom of the 9th. The Dodgers are 2 outs away from knocking off another game from Arizona Diamondbacks. So again, Diamondbacks, Padres, Braves all lose. Mets win. We're getting closer.
You just want as many different levers to pull to make the postseason, as many opportunities as possible. If one of those teams trips up in some kind of big way and the Mets continue to win, it doesn't matter who they pass. You just want that possibility to be in the postseason. Paul Blackburn is going to throw a rehab game on Tuesday, so I assume he'll either start the finale against Cincinnati or the following day after that when they start their road trip. So Blackburn's on his way back. So what I mean by all that is I think we're looking at one more start for Tyler McGill and then a shift to the bullpen in all likelihood. We'll give you another Rico wrapping up this series. It'll be a late Rico because it'll be another DVR day for me. I mean, it's a Sunday afternoon of Labor Day weekend. I think I may watch that game at about 9 o'clock at night. So if you're interested, the series recapping Rico Brogna will be late Sunday night. But we do appreciate the emails, the ricob@gmail.com. We'll listen to some of your voicemails tomorrow night as well. 725-222-8699 if you want to check in. My final message to our beloved New York Mets. Don't screw this up. Beat the White Sox, sweep them, and let's move on. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and downloading another edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.